Welcome to another episode of One-on-One with Mitch Lafon. I am your host, Mitch Lafon, and this week's guest has been described by Guitar World as the hardest working musician you'll ever meet. We're talking, of course, with Joel Hoekstra, who's been with Night Ranger, currently with Trans Siberian Orchestra, VHF, Whitesnake, and, of course, Rock of Ages on Broadway. And, of course, my co-host this week is Mark Strigl of Talking Metal. Mark, you've seen him on Broadway.
Yeah, recently, actually, Mitch. My wife and I went. We were in, I believe, like the third or second row, right up front, and Joel was just great. And I remember being very impressed with his guitar playing in the show. You know, which is kind of a funny take on the whole '80s rock and metal scene.
A fluffy show.
Yeah, you've seen it, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners have too. But beyond that, I remember thinking, wow, this guy is great. So when you told me who was coming on the show and I went to his website, I was like, wow, that's the same guy that we saw on Broadway in Rock of Ages. And he is just a great guitar player.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's in such high demand. And, you know, he's got a great gig going on. Right now, he's going to head out on tour with Trans Siberian Orchestra, doing November dates, December dates into January. Then right back to Broadway for some Rock of Ages. And then in the spring, Whitesnake is going to get things going. And
awesome.
They're going to head out on tour. Lots of summer dates coming up this year. And, of course, a new album. And you'll hear during the interview we talk about the new album. But it is done and into the mixing stages. So I'm very much looking forward to new Whitesnake. In fact, I just got some old new Whitesnake. They have a new live in '84 Back to the Bone DVD and CD release that just came out, and I just picked it up, and it's fantastic. I mean,
yeah, I ordered it today on Amazon. It's funny you mentioned that. I ordered that today on Amazon.
Yeah, it's a great package. Anything with David Coverdale is a great package. So, you know, why don't we... and of course, Joel's also in a band called VHF. I just really want to get a shout-out for that because it's the drummer, Todd Vinny, and I can't pronounce his last name. It's Vinciguerra. Listen, please excuse my French, right?
Okay.
Anyway, Tony Franklin is with him on that, and of course, Joel, and they just put out their VHF Very High Frequency album. Another masterpiece. You know, hey, Guitar World's not wrong.
Yeah.
This is possibly the hardest working man in rock right now.
I believe it.
Yeah. So why don't we sit back and listen to Joel Hoekstra. We are talking with Joel Hoekstra of Whitesnake and, of course, Trans Siberian Orchestra. Good day, Joel. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So my pleasure, by the way. Big fan of the last Night Ranger album. Great stuff. How much of that did you play on?
Are you referring to High Road?
Yeah.
Well, I played on every song on it.
Yeah.
I did approximately half of the guitars.
Right.
So,
right.
Terrific. I was very pleased with the work that we got done with that one.
So, from Night Ranger, you get a call, I'm assuming from David Coverdale, and he says, come and join Whitesnake. Tell me about making that transition. Why did you jump at the chance and all that sort of wonderful stuff?
I felt that the timing was right. David is rock royalty, so any opportunity to get to work with him, you want to take seriously.
Right.
And I just feel like it's a great opportunity to show some different sides of my playing and to branch out and play for some new fans and just expand upon what already is a really nice career, but hopefully take it to the next level.
How is the playing different in Night Ranger compared to Whitesnake? Because Whitesnake has had Steve Vai, they had Doug Aldrich. I mean, guys who can just tear it up. Big difference?
I would say that both of them involve technical guitar playing.
Mm-hmm.
Whitesnake is probably a little more of a blues-based sound. Night Ranger, I would, I guess, term more of a melodic hard rock sound.
Right.
I love both of them, and I love both bands, and I love their songs. I just think probably Whitesnake lends itself to playing a little more of the roots rock and blues style.
Okay.
It just offers me an opportunity to show a couple different sides to my playing.
Okay. So when do you and David get sort of the Whitesnake machine up and running? You know, the band didn't tour in the last year, and they've put out a couple of live DVDs and CDs and stuff. When does Joel and Dave get together to make new music and then get it to the fans?
Oh, that's already happened. The album is already being worked on.
Okay.
I think I could probably safely say stick a fork in my guitars at this time. Those are done.
Okay.
In fact, most of the overdubs are basically done. The album is headed for I believe, I don't want to speak ahead of hearing the official word, but it's definitely close to entering the mix mode.
Oh, right.
And should be released early in 2015 with a tour following.
Now, you know, since the album is getting to those final stages, how would you qualify it? Is it sort of what Dave was doing at the late 70s, early 80s, or is this more to what he was doing in the mid 80s, or is this sort of a completely new sound? What are we feeling on this one?
Yeah, as my stock answer has been, well, we're certainly not going to come out with a smooth jazz album. It's just going to be blues-inspired rock and roll. All the style that made Whitesnake great. And we've got some great stuff on there, and just very excited for everyone to hear it.
Now, coming into that situation, does Dave enable you to write with the band and have creative input? Or it's like, hey, look, Joel, this is what I want to hear, go play it?
Oh, well, as far as me being able to play like I want, David's fantastic. He really puts me at ease and allows me to be who I am as a player and what I feel. He's very encouraging. So that end of it is terrific. The writing is something that we're all just sort of keeping our cards close to, what's the term? Close to our chest at this time. Right. So we're not giving that away yet. But they're great songs, and I think everybody's going to be really thrilled when they hear it.
Okay, and there's nothing left over with Doug Aldrich playing on it or anything like that. This is brand new. This is not, demos from the vault kind of thing.
No, it's going to be Reb Beach and myself on the guitars on the album, absolutely. And it was really great to work with Reb. We've always gotten along, and I've always just thought he was a great guy and a great player. But to get a chance to get in the studio with him, we did end up writing a lot of our two guitar solos together, and that was a lot of fun, and definitely some cool guitar work on the album.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about working with Reb, because you've just come out of the Night Ranger thing with Brad Gillis, and he is definitely an unsung guitar god. I mean, truly, for some reason, when people think guitar gods, they go, Zakk Wylde and Eddie Van Halen, but they forget about Brad. Tell me a little bit about working with Reb. What does he bring to the table?
Well, I think Reb is totally unsung too, and doesn't really get his proper due in the scene. When people, I guess, reference the icons of that '80s rock scene, everybody always talks about Lynch and DeMartini, and of course, the big ones like Yngwie. But Reb is right there with any of them. I'd put him on the same level and then some. He's a fantastic player and a great guy, and I think that him and I share a lot of common ground technically to be able to pull off some harmony things together. That's really exciting for both of us. And certainly each of us still have our own identifiable styles, but it is a lot of fun to work with somebody that can pull off so many of my ideas that I come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move over to Trans Siberian Orchestra. The tour is coming up. You've been posting on Facebook that you've been having all kinds of wonderful rehearsals. What are we going to see with TSO? Let's call it TSO. What are we going to see with the band this year?
Well, for those that haven't seen the Trans Siberian Orchestra show, the front half is always one of a rock opera. That's one of the 3 Christmas albums, and this is going to be the first year that the band is performing the Christmas Attic on the front end. Mm-hmm. So that just involves having basically a new set list on the front end. For those that have seen the show a bunch of times, the music on the front end will be different. And then the second half of the show is always a little bit more of just a flat-out rock concert where we just play a lot of the cool TSO songs that everybody knows and loves. And, the production will be amazing. It always is. Paul O'Neill really dumps all his resources in and gives everything he can to the fans on this tour. And I think that's really why it's doing what it's doing right now, which is unheard of for rock. The fact that we're selling out arenas 2 shows a day on this tour. I mean, many of the performances will play for in a day 30,000 people. So it's an honor to be a part of for me. I'm number one, I'm just lucky to be making a living playing guitar.
Right.
I just think there's so many great players out there, and it's a tough business these days. So I'm thrilled just at that fundamental level. But for me to have an opportunity to step on a stage that's really, the production is second to none. It's just amazing. Yeah. And to be able to play with so many great players in Trans Siberian, it's an honor for me.
It really is. Now, when Trans Siberian started off, which I guess was 99 or 2000, I mean, way back in the day, I had gotten a press release and we're talking about all these heavy metal guys or guys that had been in thrash bands and stuff that were going to do these Christmas things. And I think my first thought, and a lot of rock reporters' thoughts, were, wow, this is going to be a bloody mess. And it's turned out that it's absolutely brilliant. Why do you think it resonates? What makes it so special?
I think it's that it's so unique and that it appeals to literally every age group. Mm-hmm. When you perform in Trans Siberian, despite the fact it's rockin' and you're playing a rock show, essentially it appeals all the way down from small children all the way to seniors that we have in the crowd. And that was really Paul O'Neill's concept, is to come up with something that just appealed to all ages, hence the name. The Trans Siberian Orchestra, a lot of people think, well, they must be from Siberia, but really it refers to the railway, which connects more cultures than any other railway in the world. So that was really the concept behind the name, and I think he's really succeeded in putting together something so unique that just people of all ages and races and you name it come and enjoy the show. So once again, I'm just thrilled to be a part of that.
Yeah, and you've been a part of it since 2010. How is that going to affect your time in Whitesnake? I mean, obviously you're going to go on the road now till January, so a good 6 weeks, I guess, is the run. Does that mean?
Yeah, a little over. I'll be out through January 4 this year. So far, so good. Obviously, this year is not a problem, and most likely, Whitesnake usually stops touring by the end of October, which is when I would need to be freed up to go do this again. So hopefully things will work out scheduling-wise. Otherwise, we'll just cross that bridge when I get to it.
Okay, so hopefully it's not going to... I guess the operative word is hopefully it's not going to be an issue. You'll be able to keep doing both.
Yeah, hopefully so. And once again, you just always take these things as they come.
Was there any...
but it would appear from past history that I'll be fine. Whitesnake has never really gone into November, so...
Which is good. Was there any talk of being able to do both Whitesnake and Night Ranger? Was there really a moment where you had to choose, or could you have sort of done both given the touring schedules?
Well, I'd love to be able to clone myself and do every gig.
Right.
But at a point, the scheduling becomes obviously difficult. And I did inquire with the Night Ranger guys and said, hey, we could maybe treat it as a leave or for a while. But eventually, it's just common sense just said, hey, this is scheduling-wise, this is going to be an issue. And I totally understand that on their side. And I think they understand my side of it. And so it's all good. This move really wasn't about me wanting to leave Night Ranger. I was totally happy playing with those guys and love those guys, all as people. But this definitely presents me with a very cool opportunity that I wanted to take.
Yeah, well, listen, as a fan of both bands, I think this is a great move. I love your playing, and I think you coming to Whitesnake is going to add that dimension that the band lost when Doug left, you know. So I'm looking forward to this.
Cool. Yeah, it's my job to work as hard as I can and bring a lot of enthusiasm to it. And despite the fact rock and roll is often about magic and I guess things that can't be described, it often just comes down to hard work, how much work you're willing to put in. And that's one of my strengths. So I'll just be prepping as hard as I can and making sure that I give the fans everything I've got every time out and all the time up leading into it as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Now, you also played with the Broadway musical Rock of Ages. Were you part of the production that actually toured and went out to Boston and to Montreal and Toronto, or were you sort of the one that was in New York all the time?
I'm in the Broadway production, which is the one that stays in New York City.
Okay.
And that's just perfect with me.
Okay.
It gives me an opportunity to have a gig every day I'm home, and it's very easy for me to take off.
Okay.
Whereas if I were doing the tour where you do 2-week sit-downs or 1-week sit-downs in cities, it'd be extremely difficult for me to manage anything else outside of doing that.
Okay.
So this has allowed me to, every time I was out with Night Ranger or with Trans Siberian Orchestra, I just subbed the show out at Rock of Ages. But the day I'm home, I was back in there playing a show. So that's just been a beautiful, beautiful thing for me on many levels. Number one, just being able to perform as many shows as I have in a year, which if you include sessions and things of that nature, I've had probably 400 gigs a year for about the last 6-7 years. So yeah, it's been fantastic. It's been a great run for me to build as a player and professionally, certainly. So financially, no complaints. That's been really nice to just always have a gig.
That's a great gig. So let me talk a little bit about this Broadway musical thing, because you obviously can't, well, okay, maybe not, you correct me if I'm wrong. To me, you obviously can't play the way you want to in a Broadway musical. You can't just get out there and whip out a guitar solo and say, well, I'm doing whatever I want tonight. You know, it's more constricted than that. How does it work in terms of getting organized, putting it together? How do rehearsals go? How do you put together a Broadway musical? You're playing for a Broadway musical.
Yeah, oddly enough, the music kind of comes last.
Right.
So they gave us...
Well, it makes sense.
I think 2 days, because, well, number one, it's an extremely expensive thing to put together a Broadway show for these producers, so I'm not knocking them at all for that. But to pay a band to rehearse, they're going to get as little time as possible to save money to be able to launch the show and have money for advertising, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I think we rehearsed for 2 days, and then we led into what was called tech rehearsals off Broadway, which we did one really slow run-through of the show, and music was being rewritten. So actually, when we began the show in fall of 2008 off Broadway, the band actually had music stands up there, and we were reading music, and all of us hated it. We go, oh man! But there was no way that we could have memorized it. There was music being rewritten right before we went on. So it began like that, and then eventually you memorize the form, and it becomes a little more stable. And I do improvise within the framework, and I do get to play quite a bit of the way I like to play. Although I will say on Broadway, your guitar is lower in the mix the majority of the time than you'd like it to be. They love to mix the vocalists a little too loud. But Rock of Ages is really, it's not so much about, people aren't going to buy a ticket to go to see that show to say, wow, isn't that guitar player great? They're going there to have a good time, hear tunes that they like, drink, and the show's really funny. And I think for those that haven't seen the live show, you'd actually have a great time. The movie lost the humor, in my opinion. They rewrote the script, and while I did have a cameo in the movie and that was a great life experience, the movie didn't capture the humor that the live show has. And most people that I know that are rockers even have come to Rock of Ages kind of going, I don't know if I want to go to this. But they walk away going, you know what, that was really cool and that was fun. it's the vibe is that it doesn't take itself seriously. The band, we perform the music with integrity and try and play it extremely well. We're not up there making a mockery of the music. It's the joke and the tongue-in-cheek stuff about the 80s in the show usually comes down to a lot of the stereotypes, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, when you tell the cast members that you've gone and joined Whitesnake, do they giggle and say, aha, you're in an 80s band, or they're like, dude, that's really cool?
Well, the funny thing is that Rock of Ages begins with a giant picture of David Coverdale behind us making an announcement that everybody needs to turn off their cell phones, and it's a very witty bit that David put together for it. So I've been listening to David talk every day for the last 6 years, and I think the first time I had a voicemail from him, I thought the show was beginning. Well, oh, man, I better get my guitar on. And there is another moment in the show where one of the characters says that he loves Whitesnake, and it's my job to kind of ratchet up the crowd in that spot. So I've been hearing David talk and cheering on Whitesnake in a section of that show for 6 years. So, no, I think the cast they think it's cool. I don't know if a lot of our cast members even really know any Whitesnake songs beyond Here I Go Again that's in the show. Right. The band guys do. All of us love rock and are just from the rock world. We're just hired in the Broadway show.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how it is for a musician to prepare. Like, you know, when you were about to step on stage with Night Ranger, you must have sort of a different ritual and a different way to prepare, a different mental frame than standing out on a Broadway musical stage, right?
Yeah, each gig is different, definitely. With Night Ranger, I would just basically always warm up playing solos that I was going to play in the set. And I do that with Trans Siberian, too. I just take any of the difficult stuff that's coming up and I'm about to play and just warm up with that. With Rock of Ages, honestly, nowadays I don't even really warm up. I hate to say it.
No, but
I just go out and do the show. But I've played that show now over 2,000 times, I think.
Right.
So, or close to, certainly. So for me, I know how to play the show at this point, and it's a different mindset. I'm in the background the majority of the show while I'm on stage the whole time. There's certainly not as much weight on me in Rock of Ages as there is when I'm playing with a band. But the bottom line is it's really cool for me to be able to have a gig every single day I'm home, and it still is something I enjoy doing. It's not as cool as playing with a band, but it's been a great opportunity for me on many levels.
I'm just trying to imagine it, you know, with a crowd, the light, you know, you go to blackout and then the lights come up and the band hits the stage and the crowd roars and everybody's cheering and they sing to all the songs. But in Broadway, they sort of just want you to sit there and be quiet and listen. And that's got to be a very strange vibe for a rock guitarist, that, you know, you're not feeding off that crowd energy. You're just like, all right, let's just play this.
Well, honestly, I've gotten my feet wet quite a bit in this theater world, because one of the first gigs I had that was a regular thing was this show called Love Janis, about Janis Joplin.
Right.
And that was the reason I moved to New York. And I did, I think, 700 some performances of that. It ran for a couple of years. So I definitely got thrown into playing like a theater gig at that point, a rock theater gig. So I get it. It's common sense. You just have to be extra quiet between songs because there's dialogue, and there's moments where the crowd is fired up and really into it. And I think in a way, because it's theater, you take extra pride when you get the audience to go completely berserk.
Yeah, it really is. So, any other Broadway shows in your future, or is it pretty much Rock of Ages, TSO, and Whitesnake, and that's sort of your 2015 right there?
Yeah, the way things are lining up right now, depending on Rock of Ages, its lifespan, I'm not exactly sure how long the show will run. It's just open-ended, and they just let you know when it's going to close. But for the time being, whenever I'm home, so right now I'm going to do the Trans Siberian Orchestra Winter Tour. I'll get home and I'll go back to Rock of Ages briefly, assuming it's still going, until the Whitesnake tour. And any holes that I'm home, I will be able to hop right back into Rock of Ages. And of course, I'm working on a couple side projects as well. I have that VHF project that was basically psychedelic instrumental rock, and then I've got a vocal project.
Actually, can you talk a bit about VHF? Because
yeah, sure, man.
That was essentially why we had set up the interview, and silly me just completely forgot about it. and well, let me be the first to apologize for having forgotten about it. But please,
no worries, bro.
Yeah, tell me about it. Who's in the band with you, and when's it coming out, and all that wonderful stuff?
Well, it's already been released.
Right, okay.
It's the drummer Todd Vinciguerra's project, essentially. He came to me and said, I've got some drum tracks, and I had Tony Franklin play to those. And I thought, wow, well, that's pretty interesting. You did like a song structure on drums first, and then had a bass player write a song to it. I thought, that's pretty cool. And he gave me one track and said, why don't you play on this and see how it goes? And I did. And I thought, wow, it's really unique and really cool. And it gives me an opportunity to lay down a lot of tracks and experiment with sounds, etc. So I agreed to do the EP, which is 7 songs, and released, I'm trying, it was probably a few months ago on Mind's Eye Records, and certainly not something you put out in hopes that it's going to be a commercial success or some kind of like chart topper, but it's cool. It's psychedelic instrumental rock with, again, it's nice to show different sides you're playing to people so you don't get pigeonholed, and I'm always into that, I just love playing guitar. So it's a cool album, and everybody should check it out. Tony Franklin's just a killer bass player. For those that don't remember him, he's from Blue Murder and from The Firm, of course, with Jimmy Page and Paul Rodgers. So getting a chance to work with him is killer. Yeah. And he's also playing on the side project that I'm currently cultivating. That's got quite a lineup, actually. It's Russell Allen singing from Adrenaline Mob and Symphony X, and Vinny Appice on drums.
Oh, nice.
And once again, Tony Franklin on bass, Derek Sherinian playing keys.
Oh, very nice.
And Jeff Scott Soto sang the backups on the album. Oh. And that's sounded really killer. I was set to release it once again as an EP independently, but it looks as if it's probably going to get a record deal right now to turn it into a full-length album. So that's kind of what's happening there.
Oh, that's very cool. And of course, Vinny is an incredible drummer, having played with Sabbath back in the day. And what was the other band he did? Kill Devil Hill.
Well, of course, Dio, all the Dio stuff.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that project. When do you think you might have that finished and released?
I'm going to eye up having out hopefully in early April. I'm going to hopefully be done recording it by towards the end of January. I'm going to write the rest of the material out here on the road and have the guys start laying down their tracks. But yeah, it's really cool. Can't wait for everybody to hear it. Vinny is such a great drummer. He's just got such a cool style. It's not just about being robotic like a lot of drummers are these days. Vinny just knows how to make songs come to life with his style. And Russell Allen is definitely one of the best singers in rock, and I think is underexposed in a way because of the progressive nature of Symphony X and the modern sound of Adrenaline Mob. I think a lot of people don't recognize just how good Russell is yet, but I think that this stuff really shows that off.
Oh, that's going to be that's going to be killer. And Derek Sherinian's on there too. Of course, Derek having played with Billy Idol. With who else did Derek play with? Dream Theater.
Yeah, he's playing with Joe Bonamassa now.
That's right, and he played with Alice Cooper back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, he's had a few gigs. He's done pretty well for himself.
Yeah, listen, he was off stage for Kiss for a while too. So.
Yeah. So the lineup is killer, and everybody played great, but we really kept it. Instead of trying to show everybody off, we just kept it about the songs, just great players playing cool tunes, and hopefully we can give the fans something special with that too as well next year.
Good. And just remind me, what was the name of that project?
It's still unnamed, believe it or not. I gotta get it together. I have something in mind, but I can't really say it yet right now.
But it's not a solo record per se. It's more going to be a band project.
No, it's going to have a band name.
Okay.
It'll have a band name, and we'll put out the feelers in terms of seeing about any live support for it. But it's going to be difficult with a world tour with Whitesnake next year and Trans Siberian. But we'll see what we can figure out.
Hey, maybe you could be the opening band for Whitesnake. Who knows, right?
Yeah, not likely. I don't see that happening. But we'll figure something out.
Give me Dave's number. I'll call him up and just let him know.
Yeah, David's a great guy, but I think at that point he'd have to say, "What, are you kidding me?"
Yeah, and of course, I'll just quickly touch upon Very High Frequency, the VHF again, because I honestly feel bad that I completely slipped my mind. That's out now, and of course that was a lot of fun to play on. I imagine. Will there be a follow up on that? You think?
I don't know. I'm just taking it step by step here with my career. I have so many things on my plate, and I'm enjoying them all. And as I said, I'd love to be able to clone myself and do it all, but we'll just see what schedule permits and take the next logical step.
Yeah, there you go. That sounds great. Thank you for your time. And of course, remember, let's remind folks to head over to joelhoekstra.com. But absolutely fantastic. And, thank you. Thank you for today.
Thanks, bro. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
There you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Joel Hoekstra, formerly of Night Ranger, now with Whitesnake, Trans Siberian Orchestra, and of course, Rock of Ages. And as he mentioned, David Coverdale watched upon him in that show. Did you notice that out in New York?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, and he mentioned that because I was thinking that isn't it ironic that the announcer voiceover guy that is playing during the Rock of Ages show on Broadway is indeed David Coverdale. So it's ironic that Joel would end up in the band with David Coverdale.
Yeah, and what I think is going to be the highlight of the live shows this year is Here I Go Again, because with Rock of Ages, he's played it hundreds of times, so he doesn't even have to bother rehearsing that. He's going to have that one like a well-oiled machine, so that'll be the highlight of the Whitesnake show. But what a great guy. Absolutely, very friendly. Very talented, and and of course, let's not forget Trans Siberian Orchestra. As you heard me mention in the interview, when I got pitched that back in '99 or 2000 to do interviews, and they said, "Oh, we're going to have all these guys from heavy metal bands, from Testament and all this, play Christmas music." I was like, "Wow, what are they thinking?"
Yeah.
And here we are, 15 years later. And the thing's doing sold out arena dates, not once but twice in the same same
city.
day.
It's insane.
It on paper it should have been a complete failure. I mean, it just read like, wow, what these people are insane. This is never going to fly. And again, 15 years later, they're doing about 30,000 people per night or per day in cities across America, Canada and the States. So. Good on Joel. Great career.
Absolutely.
That's what it is to be a working musician. It's easy to be Gene Simmons or Bruce Dickinson, but when you're in the trenches every night, you got to work these gigs, and nobody does it better than Joel. So
yeah, the other thing I could say about Joel in the Rock of Ages show is he actually. Some acting comes across, he's very theatrical, and he plays a part in the show. He's not like really one of the main stars up front, but in a way he is, because he's always on stage with the performers doing his thing, so yeah, he's just great in Rock of Ages.
Yeah, he's not down in the pit like most musicians are at Broadway. Yes. He's actually on stage and playing. So hey, great on him, and a great interview. A pleasure that he could speak with me this year. And listen, with Whitesnake going on tour, I would personally love to see them at Heavy Montreal. So fingers crossed that happens.
Yeah, I'd tell you that live Whitesnake record that came out last year in 2013. was one of my favorites of the year. For some reason, I forgot to put it on my best of 2013 list, but it was just great. I think it's called Made in Britain, and it is such a fun listen. If you haven't heard that, guys, go back and pick it up. Whitesnake live, Made in Britain, the 2013.
They also had a live in Japan one. Was that last year or the year before? Because I think they did two. They did two last year, right?
I think you're right about that. The only one I had was the Made in Britain one, which is a double CD. But that sounds right. That sounds right that there was another one.
Yeah, and of course this year the live in '84. I mean, it's the John Sykes, Cozy Powell, Neil Murray, David Coverdale 1984 Slide It In tour at Super Rock Japan. Listen, it's winner. I got it. It's absolutely winner.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, so there you go. There's Joel. Let's remind the listeners to check out One on One with Mitch Lafon on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, and of course Talking Metal at all the same places. And our other show, Metal Raps. Now, interesting show that we do with Mitch Joel, where we discuss latest rock news and stuff. And somebody on Twitter recently said, 15 or 20 minutes is not enough. I need more Metal Raps. So they want an expanded edition of Metal Raps. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, that is good to hear. We'd like to hear that people want more, for sure.
Yeah, that was Mitch Joel's reply to that tweet. He said, "Hey, I'm glad we're leaving you wanting more." And I guess that's the credo of anybody in show business, right? Leave them wanting more. So
that's what they say. And by the way, guys, Mitch Lafon is on episode 502 of Talking Metal, and we talk Iron Maiden, and we also talk a little Kiss at the end of the episode. So if you're interested in that, go over to talkingmetal.com and check that out. It's episode 502.
Yeah, you know what? At some point, I think we should do a one-on-one where we just talk about certain things, and I'd like to talk about the Kiss Cruise and the Kiss Love Gun expanded edition and get everybody's thoughts on that. But for now, let's leave it at that. Joel Hoekstra, and of course, head over to joelhoekstra.com, and you know what? With a name like that, I'm going to spell it JoelHoekstra.com, joelhoekstra.com for the latest on Joel, and thanks for listening, folks.